TCU can stay put at quarterback in the second portal window. They're set.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I've been covering TCU athletics for the past 12 years. I changed my mind about something. Call me a flip-flopper, call you what you want, but call me what you want, I guess. But during the first portal window, as TCU was setting up their roster and they went, and I thought they made some really good moves. One thing that I wasn't adamant about it, but if I was talking about the quarterback position, I was like, you know what? I think they need to go get one more guy, a veteran presence. And I did an episode a few weeks ago on Alex Orji, the Michigan quarterback who was in the portal. I thought TCU should have gone and got him and let him run basically the Savion Williams package this upcoming season. Now, Alex ended up at UNLV. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to go position by position and just say, hey, we need to add a guy here. You don't need to add anyone here. And we'll just go room by room. I'm going to start with quarterback today. When the second portal window opens up in the spring, I don't think TCU needs to go chase after a QB. I feel like they're set. You've got Josh Hoover, who's your starter. And honestly, knock on wood, if you do that, if you believe in that, Josh has been very durable through the year and a half he's played. I mean, I can't even really think about an injury scare that he's had. Now, it helps when you're sitting in the pocket a lot of the time, right? They don't use him a lot in the run game. He's not somebody that's going to take off and scramble much. I would like to see him use that ability more, whether it's picking up a first down with his feet every now and then, or just getting better at throwing on the move, keeping his eyes downfield, making things happen when the play breaks down. But overall, Josh has been very healthy. He's been very good. I saw On3 put out a quarterback list, like their top returning quarterbacks for next season, and he was number 11 in the country. I really think there's some legitimate hype about him having a Big 12 Player of the Year type of season. With the numbers he put up last year, if TCU can win more games against what will be better competition this upcoming season, he's going to get a lot of attention, and that'll be good for him and TCU as a whole. Behind him, you have Ken Seals and Adam Schobel. And really my thought process when I was thinking about the possibility of adding a quarterback, it was more, could you add somebody who brought a different dynamic to this offense? And maybe it's just the bias of the recency bias of the season ending and everything that played out during football season, and the fact that TCU just could not run the ball in the traditional way. Now, they're banking on a few things happening to improve that. They've largely kind of figured out the running back position. Cam Cook is leaving. I think there will be a competition, but I would imagine Jeremy Payne or Nate Palmer will be your starting running back going into the year. And I think the bottom line is both those guys are going to get a significant amount of carries, and will get their chance to prove that they can be the dudes moving forward. Your offensive line, Cade Bennett's going to be healthy. You're going to slide Colton Deary over to center. You have some veteran guys, some transfers who have been around for a little while now. At the other interior spot, you hope your tackles hold up, and overall it makes for a better run blocking team. I do think there's a world where the offensive line might not be as good overall, but they could be better in the run game, and that could help this team. Because last season, they were a really good pass protection unit. I mean, they had their moments. Like the Baylor game wasn't great. There were some other games, Houston. But for the most part, they did a really good job. Even when teams would bring a lot of pressure and bring exotic blitzes and try to heat Josh Hoover up, they did a nice job of keeping a clean pocket for him and maintaining that. And so when I was thinking about the possibility of bringing somebody in, my thought process was bringing in a mobile quarterback and really selling them on the idea of, hey, would you or could you run some specialized stuff for us that would allow us to have another dimension to this offense? And while I do believe there's some advantages to that, if they can run the ball well in the traditional fashion, then I think that'll be really good for the offense as a whole, and it allows Josh Hoover to not get out of rhythm. Because I did think last season there were drives where they would throw Haas in there for like a play or two, and it wasn't good for Haas. And it wasn't good for Josh. It wasn't good for Haas because he didn't really get the opportunity to actually run the offense. He didn't get the chance to see what was going on. It was just like, hey, get in there and run QB power or QB sweep or whatever. And then Josh just has to sit out for a play or two, and then it's like, all right, it's 3rd and 7 or it's 2nd and 8. Now get back in there and run this offense. It didn't totally make sense. There were times where it did, but by and large, it didn't make a lot of sense when they would do it in early down situations like that. So being able to run the ball with your running backs is ideal. And I think TCU is setting themselves up to do that. But the bigger point, when we talk about the quarterback room, I think it's really important. One, you've got your guy that's your starter, which is awesome. Behind him, Ken Seals, we know what he is. It's a valuable part of this team. He's there to be a good presence in the locker room, a good presence for those quarterbacks. And if it comes down to it, you're not totally lost if he has to play because he's had starting experience in the SEC before. He's going to have another year of understanding this offense, and he'll be ready to go. The most important part of this, though, in my mind, when we look at the future, it is imperative that Adam Schobel feels like he is a part of this team, that they have a clear plan for him. As my friend Vince said, communication is key, right? That's what a lot of this is. When we talk about the transfer portal and why are guys leaving, yes, it's playing time. It's a lot of different things. But if we get to the root issue of it, oftentimes it's about communication. Communication with the kids, communication with their families. So get out in front of this. Let Adam Schobel know we think you can be the guy here moving forward. And one way you could do that, and I said this in an episode a few weeks ago, give him a legitimate chance to compete for that number 2 job. Don't just hand that to Ken Seals. And that's nothing against Ken. But say, hey, look, we're going to give you opportunities in the spring to run with the 2s, maybe even a few times with the 1s, but mainly it's going to be with the second team. During fall camp, we'll give you some snaps with the 2s, and we'll see if you can win this job. And if you show that you have the talent and the poise and the mental makeup to handle that, then if there is an injury or if something goes down or if we need to make a change for whatever reason, which I don't think that'll happen, but, the best laid plans, right? Give Adam Schobel a chance to step up and make something happen. Make sure that he's the dude that runs in there during the second half of the FCS game. When you play Abilene Christian, hopefully you're up by 40 points. Give him the opportunity to get out there in the 3rd and 4th quarter and let him throw the ball. Don't just have him hand it off and run the clock down till there's 5 seconds left on the play clock and snap it. Let him run some plays. I mean, you don't have to do a ton of that, but allow him to experience what it would be like at real game speed to run this offense. A few years ago, Josh Hoover came in during the game against, I forget the opponent now. It was the FCS team. They played Nicholls State, I believe. They're playing Nicholls State. Josh comes in. He looked out of sorts. He looked nervous. He didn't look like he knew what he was doing. But they stuck with him. They allowed him to get some snaps. And you know what? It was helpful. I think that experience helped him when he was called upon against Iowa State. It still looked pretty all over the place and scattered. But I feel like the opportunity he had to get some real snaps in that moment was beneficial. So give Adam Schobel that opportunity if you have that chance. You've got 4 games to play with. And I don't even really, yes, think about the redshirt possibilities. Think about the eligibility possibilities. But I said before, I'm not sure how caught up you can get in that world in this day and age in college football when so much of it revolves around whether or not you're playing. And if I'm not, and if I don't feel like I'm getting an opportunity here, then I'm moving on somewhere else. But I don't believe TCU needs to make a move at quarterback. I think they're set really well, and they're in a very good spot. They have the guy that they trust to be the starter, to go make plays, to win on a weekly basis. They have a young guy who is the future of the program and hopefully will be the dude who takes over once Josh is done and will get valuable reps during practice and in games and has that chance to sit and learn. And then you also have another player on the roster who is a veteran presence, is a good sounding board if these guys need to bounce ideas off somebody, but is also, break glass in case of emergency. he can do the job, not to the same level that Josh can, but he can do the job, I think, adequately if called upon. So at quarterback, there's no need to make moves in the portal in this second window. But there will be other areas that we'll talk about later on this week and beyond where I think they need to go add somebody. And I think as fans and media people, we can get caught up in like the shiny new toy is always more fun, right? Like it's always fun to add someone from the outside because it's like we don't know who this person is. There's all kinds of possibilities. At QB, it's really set. And, even if you brought somebody in, it would be more of the, hey, this is another backup. And I don't think that would be good because, one, you got Ken Seals, but also just because, Schobel's here. Give him the chance to get snaps when he can. There's no need to go get a fourth quarterback. But there's other places on the roster where I feel like competition could really be beneficial for this team in practice and even early on in the season once the game starts. And we'll talk about that more later on. But when we come back, speaking of the portal, TCU basketball, I think they really bungled the portal this offseason. We'll talk about it next year on Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. FanDuel, it is where the game starts. It's Super Bowl time. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, Eagles, Chiefs. There's endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. They have live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. I'll get that little part down at some point. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Again, one $5 winning bet gets you $200 in bonus bets. That's at FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. FanDuel is where the game starts. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. TCU basketball, the men are coming off a pretty embarrassing loss to UCF. Just got destroyed in Orlando. Never really close. Knights jumped out to a 9-0 lead. TCU cut it to like 6 or 8 at different points in the first half. But overall, could not shoot the ball. 1 of 20 from 3. That's not great. UCF shot the ball well. And they're now 3-5 in conference play. They get ready to play Texas Tech on Wednesday. But I wanted to spend some time talking about kind of a big picture topic today. There have been some murmurs about this if you follow like TCU fandom, and I haven't paid attention to it for a while because in most of these cases I think it's unfair. But there are 2 specific instances with the portal where I think TCU really messed up this past offseason. Managing a basketball roster is a really difficult job. I'm not making an excuse. I'm just saying I know there's a lot of TCU fans that are frustrated with the way that TCU has gone about roster construction over the past few years and how there's always turnover. And I get that. I would also say if you look around college basketball, with the exception of some blue blood programs, and even those, you're attracting a lot of one and done guys. A number of teams around the country are basically playing with brand new rosters each and every year. I don't think it's good for the sport. I don't think it's great for college basketball as a whole, but that's just the reality that we live in right now. But at the end of last season, I mean, TCU, they make the tournament. They get blitzed by Utah State in round 1. And it felt like they were going into a reset. So they had a really talented freshman class coming in. And then you also had some guys that were graduating. And so Micah Peavy and Jacoby Kohl, who had been good rotational players for TCU for a few years, they had eligibility left, and they had a decision to make. And just from reading the tea leaves and kind of, I guess, this is an assumption on my part to a certain extent, but I also think it's largely true. It felt like TCU was basically saying, hey, to Micah and Jacoby specifically, it's time for you guys to move on. And I think the main reason for that is because there were 2 young guys, Isaiah Manning and Jace Posey, who had basically redshirted as freshmen. They played a lot in practice, obviously. They impressed in practice. And it felt like these guys were going to be a big part of the rotation this year along with these young freshmen. So Micah leaves, and Micah ends up at Georgetown. Micah Peavy is averaging 14.5 points per game at Georgetown. He's having a really good run right now. He scored 27 against Providence. That was in a loss. He scored 24 against Villanova in a win. Had 21 against St. John's. And last season, Micah is a dude that's improved each and every year he was on the roster. He came over from Texas Tech, and he was really just a plus defender, and that was it. And he played that role well. Early on in his career at TCU, he was a lockdown guy on the wing. He really struggled to score. But you slowly saw him get better. And there were moments last year, I remember the K-State game on the road specifically, where Micah was the best offensive player on the team. Not for the entire season, but in specific games. He was at a place offensively where he could go get a bucket himself, whether it was on post up, whether it was going off the bounce. He wasn't like a knockdown 3-point shooter, but he got better at it. Jacoby Kohl goes to Grand Canyon, and Jacoby was dealing with plantar fasciitis last year. I don't think he was ever fully healthy, but he's averaging 14 points a game and 6 rebounds. Okay, at the Group 5 level, sure, but Jacoby, when he was healthy at TCU, did some really good things. And hindsight's always 20/20, right? But looking at this roster right now, if you had Jacoby Kohl and Micah Peavy on this team, I think they would be a lot better. I don't know. I'm not saying they'd be contenders for a Big 12 title or anything like that. But along with some of the guards that you brought in, I think you'd be a pretty solid basketball squad. And the confusing thing to me is it felt like there was a change in the guard, and they're setting this up for, the future of TCU hoops with Manning, with Posey, with these freshmen. But those guys haven't played a lot. I mean, Manning and Posey have been in the rotation all year, but it's been sparingly. And Micah Robinson has seen his minutes decrease. David Punch is the one guy who's really played a lot and has played consistently. Ashton Simmons ended up redshirting. And so it's and you made these moves, and it kind of made sense if you thought about it from the perspective of all right, you're getting younger, you're getting more athletic, and you're just going to let these guys play and figure things out as they go. But that's not really what you're doing either. You're still playing a lot of veteran players. It's just transfers that weren't here last season. And this is not the first time. PJ Hagerty has gone on to have an outstanding career. He was at Tulsa, and then he went to Memphis. And I think he's averaging 20-plus a game at Memphis this year. Yeah, 22 points a game. It's hard for me to blame TCU for that because PJ was behind Mike Miles and Damian Baugh his freshman season. And I don't know the details of why he ended up leaving. He was supposed to be the next dude up as the lead scoring guard, and then he just decided he was going to go elsewhere. And then Jaden Ledee is another dude who went on to San Diego State and is somehow still playing basketball in year 19. Actually, he's with the T-Wolves now, but he was at San Diego State last year, and he went on to be a 20-point a game scorer. And if you listen to the very early days of Locked On Horned Frogs, the first year I was doing the podcast, which was Mike Miles' freshman year, I was a Jaden Ledee truther. I thought he was a contributor. I felt like when he was on the floor, good things happened. But even I did not see him becoming a 20-plus point game scorer in his career. So I'm not going to pretend I was super shocked when he left. I thought he was a good rotational player. I thought good things happened when he was on the floor. And he ended up turning into a great scorer as well. But it's just hard not to think, man, that was a miss if we truly did just let those guys kind of walk elsewhere, because they could have used that scoring this year, and just that veteran presence in general. Peavy's defense, that's how it goes. But man, they really need these young guys to step up and make something happen towards the end of the season, because if you're building towards next year, then you have to see glimmers of what that's going to be. when those guys are on the floor. Quickly, the women's team, they get some time off, which should be really helpful because they got a short rotation. They're playing a ton of minutes. We've seen multiple games this year where they struggled to hold on to leads. Really kind of happening at Baylor, too. They just made some free throws down the stretch and got a few stops to hold on and get the job done. But they get 6 days off before they take on Iowa State this upcoming Sunday. And I saw Nikki Collin, the Baylor coach, after the game. She was very complimentary of TCU in the way they played, but she was also complimentary of that crowd. And, I mean, she was honest. She was like, that's the first time I've been here where there haven't been more Baylor fans than TCU fans to see us play. And she thought it was awesome that, I don't know if she thought it was awesome, but she complimented Fort Worth and TCU on showing out and making that a great atmosphere. And there's going to be some big-time games, like conference title implications, seeding in the NCAA tournament in the second half of the Big 12 schedule for the women against Kansas State, against others. So really cool what Mark Campbell has done in a short amount of time, turning this thing around. When we come back, a few baseball notes. We'll talk about that next year on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. It's tax season. It can be confusing. It can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. This message is from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes used to be waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, then waiting and worrying some more. Now, taxes are matching with a TurboTax expert who can get your taxes done as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file away every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you get the most money back guaranteed. No wasting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. TurboTax. Give them a try today. Get that refund before time runs out. So the Big 12 preseason baseball poll came out a few days ago, and TCU is picked to finish third. Oklahoma State was picked to win the conference. Arizona second. TCU third with one first-place vote. West Virginia at 4. Tech at 5. Arizona State at 6. UCF at 7. K-State at 8. Kansas at 9. Cincinnati at 10. Houston at 11. BYU at 12. Baylor at 13. And Utah at 14. So a lot of unknown on this TCU team, but not surprisingly, like given what TCU baseball has done over the past decade plus, they're getting the benefit of the doubt from both the national media being in a couple top 25 rankings and also from the Big 12 coaches and writers. Noah Franco was named the preseason freshman of the year, and this is a dude to be excited about. He is a two-way player. He's a left-handed pitcher, but he also plays in the outfield to play first base. He reclassified, so he was a 2025 prospect. He's been playing at IMG Academy in Florida for a few years. He was the number one player in the country for 2025. He reclassified, comes in 2024, so we'll be playing this spring for the Frogs. And, he apparently throws like up to 96, can really hit the ball, did some great things in the fall. So super excited to see Noah Franco take the field. This rotation, Cademan Parker's back from Tommy John surgery, and if he's got, plus stuff again, I think he can be really effective. Looks like they're going to try to stretch out Ben Abelt and get him to a place where he can be part of this weekend rotation, which is great. I mean, as awesome as Ben was as a closer / could be a 2 or 3 inning guy, depending on what the situation was, having him, pitching every week, 5 or 6 innings, is going to be fantastic if he can carry that stuff over and, when the lineup turns over 2 or 3 times, continue to miss bats and make things happen. Anthony Silva coming back, hoping that he can bounce back in a big way this upcoming season. A lot of fun and exciting storylines about this TCU team. I also saw Kirk Saarloos talking with the media about a week ago, and he was like, one cool thing about the way the coaching change happened with TJ Bruce moving on and then bringing back Bill Mosiello, who was the head coach at Ohio State for a few years. With Mosiello focusing fully on the offense, Kirk is back with the pitching staff on a regular basis. So that's becoming his number one focus again. They had some pitching coaches over the last few years. If TCU's pitching can get back to what it was when Kirk was super involved, then this team's going to be really good. where, your Friday starter is an ace, and then Saturday and Sunday you feel like you have a great chance to win as well. It's starting soon, guys. I mean, February 14th on Valentine's Day, they'll head to San Diego to take on San Diego in a 3-game series, and we'll get our first look at this team. So ready for that, but plenty of football and basketball coverage as well the rest of the week. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Subscribe to the YouTube channel.